Okay, I want you to start by just closing your eyes for a second. Go back in time with me to, let's say, 2006.
All right, I'm there.
You're in your car, maybe a Ford Focus, maybe a Honda Civic, and you look at your windshield, and right in the middle, there's that circular grease smudge,
Ah, yes. The telltale sign.
and stuck to it is this chunky gray plastic lump with a suction cup, and it's yelling at you in a kind of robotic voice, "Turn left in 100 meters."
The TomTom. The golden era. I remember it so clearly. It was the ultimate dashboard status symbol of the mid-2000s.
It was. If you had one, you were basically living in the future.
You really were.
It meant no more fighting with those giant paper maps trying to fold them while you're driving. But here's the thing, and this is why we're doing this deep dive. Most people think that story ended.
Right. We think the story ended the day the smartphone showed up.
Exactly. We assume TomTom went the way of, I don't know, the Dodo, the BlackBerry, the dedicated MP3 player.
Which is a totally reasonable assumption to make. You don't see those suction cups on windshields anymore.
But, and this is the real twist, TomTom didn't die. In fact, it's very likely that TomTom is in your pocket right now.
Or in your car's dashboard.
It's just invisible.
And that invisibility is the whole point. It's by design. What we're really looking at today isn't just a history of a gadget. It's a masterclass in a strategy called digital servitization.
Servitization. Okay, that sounds a little like something from a stuffy MBA seminar.
It does, a bit. But it's actually a fascinating survival story. It's about how a hardware giant, a company that literally made boxes, survived a total market apocalypse.
By becoming a service provider.
Exactly. By shifting from selling physical things to consumers B2C to selling invisible data to other businesses, B2B.
And just to set the scene here, in 2008, we're talking about a company with 30 million users. They sold 12 million devices in 1 year.
They were on top of the world. And then, bam, the iPhone and Google Maps arrived to eat their lunch.
It was a classic adapt or die moment. And a lot of their competitors, like Magellan or Mio,
They're gone. Footnotes in tech history.
yeah.
TomTom made it. And how they pulled that off, that's what we're digging into.
Okay, so let's rewind. Let's go back to those glory days. That period from, say, 2004 to 2008, the gold rush.
It was a complete gold rush. They launched the TomTom Go in 2004, and you have to remember, before that, SatNav was this super expensive luxury feature.
Yeah, built into fancy cars. Cost thousands.
Right. TomTom made it portable, they made it affordable, they made it easy, they democratized it.
And the growth was just insane. I was looking at the old financials. Their revenue hit 1.74 billion euros in 2007.
Europe's fastest growing consumer electronics company. They must have felt totally invincible.
It felt like they were printing money.
But even then, buried in all that hardware success, there was a little seed of what was to come. They had a feature called MapShare.
Oh, I remember this. If a street was wrong on the map, you could actually fix it on your device.
Yes. And this is the key. You could share that fix with the whole community. That was super early data leveraging. They were already thinking about data as a product.
But the really big move, the one you're saying saved them, came in 2008
The TeleAtlas acquisition,
for a staggering amount of money.
$2.6 billion.
Okay, let's just pause on that number. 2.6 billion euros. Why? Why spend that much when you're already the king of the hardware world?
It's a perfect example of vertical integration. Until then, TomTom was just buying maps from TeleAtlas to put in the box.
They were a customer.
Right. They were dependent on a supplier for the most important part of their product. They realized, to control their future, they couldn't just rent the map data. They had to own the map maker.
So they bought the source. They bought the mine instead of just buying the gold.
Exactly. And it was a huge, huge risk. It left them with over $1.1 billion in debt, right as the 2008 financial crisis was hitting.
That is the worst possible timing.
To any analyst on Wall Street, it looked like a catastrophic mistake. They were leveraged to the hilt just as the entire world economy went into a nosedive.
But looking back now, you're saying that massive debt-fueled purchase was actually the hero of the story.
100%. Because it secured the fuel for their transformation. Without TeleAtlas, they were just a hardware assembler. When the hardware became obsolete, they would have had nothing.
Owning the data gave them an asset that had value beyond the plastic box.
It gave them a future.
Which brings us right to part two, the crash, the day the free maps arrived.
The big uh-oh moment.
It's 2008, 2009, smartphones are really taking off, and then Google Maps launches on mobile, and suddenly Turn-by-turn navigation is free.
It's just an icon on the phone you already have in your pocket.
And this was a double whammy for TomTom, right?
Oh, absolutely. First, their consumer market, the P&D market, just craters. It starts shrinking by 15–20% a year.
That's a nosedive, pure panic.
But the second hit was, in some ways, worse. Google had been a partner. They actually used TeleAtlas data.
Right.
But then Google decides to build its own maps. So overnight, your biggest partner becomes your most ferocious competitor, and they're giving the product away.
It's a nightmare scenario. Your market is shrinking, and the biggest tech company on earth is undercutting you with a freebie. So, the pivot.
The pivot. They have to stop thinking of themselves as a gadget company. They start the shift from B2C to B2B.
They realized they couldn't beat Google on free consumer maps.
No, they didn't have an ad engine to pay for it. But they realized they could sell their high-quality data to other big companies who also didn't want to rely on Google.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Precisely. And the first big validation for that strategy came in 2012, the Apple deal.
Oh, right, when Apple famously kicked Google Maps off the iPhone.
And Apple Maps, it had a very rocky start, the melting bridges, the airports in the ocean.
It was a disaster at first.
It was. But who did Apple choose to provide the underlying map data to replace Google?
TomTom.
TomTom. And that sent a massive signal to the market. It proved TomTom could be a platform.
It proved that other big tech companies needed an independent, neutral partner.
They positioned themselves as the Switzerland of maps.
I love that framing, the Switzerland of maps.
Well, think about it. If you're Apple, or later on, Uber, do you really want to build your entire service on your direct competitor's data?
No way. You don't want your supplier spying on your users or launching a rival service.
You want a neutral party. And that's exactly why Uber signed a huge global deal with them in 2015.
To power the Uber driver app.
In 300 cities. It was a classic case of co-opetition.
Okay, that's one of those corporate jargon words. Break that down for us.
It is a bit, but it's perfect here. It means cooperating with your competitors. TomTom was basically providing the engine for the very companies, Apple, Uber, that were making their own GPS devices obsolete.
They were feeding the beast that was eating their hardware business.
But by feeding it, they ensured their own survival.
Okay, so let's dig into that business model, the digital servitization thing.
Yeah.
What did this shift actually mean for the bottom line?
It means moving from selling a product to selling a result or an outcome. In the old world, TomTom sold a box. You paid 200 euros, transaction over.
One-off cash.
Right. Servitization is all about subscriptions, licenses, APIs. Apple pays a licensing fee. Uber pays for access to traffic data. It changes your revenue from being spiky to recurring.
And the numbers show a dramatic flip. By 2012, over half their revenue was already non-P&D. By 2018, it was something like 64%.
Google transformation.
But what's interesting is their total revenue is actually lower now than it was at that 2007 peak.
It is, and that's what spooks some investors. But you can't just look at the top line. You have to look at the quality of that revenue. The gross margins shot up.
Because software is cheaper to copy than a plastic box is to build.
Exactly. Selling hardware involves manufacturing, shipping, inventory, defects, selling an API key. The marginal cost of adding one more customer is basically zero.
So what were the margins like?
In their location technology division, by 2020, gross margins were hitting 80%. You just don't get that in consumer electronics.
So they traded a high-volume, low-margin business for a lower-volume but much higher-margin business.
And a much stickier one. Once a company like Uber builds your map data into their tech stack, it is incredibly difficult and expensive for them to switch.
But they didn't just kill the hardware overnight, did they? I remember seeing TomTom sports watches.
They tried. They definitely tried to find a new hardware niche. They partnered with Nike on a watch. They made action cams to compete with GoPro.
A valiant effort.
It was. But by 2017, they got out of wearables completely. They realized their core strength wasn't making gadgets. It was the map. It was the data.
Anything that distracted from that core strength had to go.
It's all about focus.
Which brings us to the big organizational surgery. Part 4. If you're going to be a pure data company, you have to strip everything else away.
And that involved some really hard choices. The biggest was in 2019 when they sold their telematics unit.
Okay, now wait. Telematics, that's the fleet management business. Right, that sounds like it was already a subscription business.
It was.
Recurring revenue. It seems like exactly the kind of business they wanted to be in. Why sell a profitable unit like that?
It's a great question, and it confused a lot of people. They sold it to Bridgestone for almost €1 billion. $910 million. It was very profitable.
Oh, why?
The logic was pure focus. Telematics is a specific vertical. It needs its own sales force, its own hardware. To save the best business, the core map engine, they needed a war chest of cash to pour into R&D.
They sold a good business to fund the great business.
They sold the car to pay for the education, betting on their future capability. They wanted to be a pure-play location technology specialist.
So what's so special about this map-making tech now? I mean, a map is a map, isn't it?
Not anymore. Not at all. In the old days, a map was static. Today, they practice what they call transactional map making.
Which means?
The map is a living database. It's constantly updating in real time. We're walking live traffic feeds every 30 seconds. And then you have HD maps.
HD like high definition.
Think high definition for a robot. These are maps with lane-level detail, accurate down to the centimeter. It's what self-driving cars need to navigate.
You can't run an autonomous car on a standard Google map.
It's not nearly precise enough. So TomTom is building the digital rails for that autonomous future, with partners like Volvo and Baidu.
And we have to mention the Huawei deal in 2020. That seems like a perfect example of that agility you mentioned.
It is. When Huawei was blocked from using Google services by the U.S. government, they were in a huge bind. No maps for their phones.
So in steps TomTom?
The Switzerland of maps, again, because TomTom is a Dutch company, they weren't bound by the same restrictions. They stepped in to power Huawei's new mapping app. They filled the strategic gap the giants created.
So that brings us to the modern era, and they've done something that seems, I don't know, almost counterintuitive. They've embraced open source.
This is their boldest move yet. In 2022, they launched the new TomTom Maps Platform. It's a hybrid model. They combine their own super accurate proprietary data with OpenStreetMap.
Which is like the Wikipedia of maps, right? Anyone can edit it.
Exactly. And for years, commercial companies kind of looked down on it as being unreliable. But TomTom is now using AI to ingest that open data, validate it, and fuse it with their professional data.
So they get the global scale of the community.
Plus their own professional-grade quality control. And it massively lowers their costs. They don't have to drive every single new road themselves anymore.
And this leads to the Overture Maps Foundation.
Yes. This is TomTom, joining forces with Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon.
That is a list of heavy hitters, and there's one very obvious name missing from that list.
Google.
Right.
The entire goal of Overture is to build an open, interoperable map standard, to break the monopoly. All these other tech giants need maps, but none of them want to be dependent on Google.
So they're all teaming up with TomTom to build an alternative.
TomTom provides the core expertise. The big tech companies provide the resources and the scale. It's the ultimate ecosystem play.
So they're collaborating with big tech to fight big tech.
That's the modern tech world in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It's not my product versus your product anymore. It's my ecosystem versus your ecosystem.
Okay, so let's wrap this all up. We've gone from suction cups to invisible data clouds. What's the key summary for this whole transformation?
The summary is that TomTom successfully moved from being a device maker to a location technology specialist. They survived by being willing to cannibalize their own cash cow, the hardware, to build a software future.
And the main lesson here?
Is ownership of the core asset. If they hadn't bought TeleAtlas back in 2008, if they didn't own the data, they'd be gone. Digital servitization only works if you have a unique service to offer. For them, that was the map itself.
It's incredible. If they had just focused on making better and better plastic boxes...
They'd be a museum piece.
Yeah.
They had to be willing to let the box go to save the business inside it.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you to chew on.
Think about this. In 2008, you bought a TomTom device to help you find your way. You were the customer.
Right.
Today, TomTom is selling data to the car itself. The car is now the customer. The car is using that data to drive, to manage its own battery, to predict traffic.
The human is almost being designed out of the loop.
TomTom's revenue is smaller today than at its 2007 peak. But is it actually more powerful? I would argue yes. Being the shiny gadget on the dashboard is glamorous, but being the invisible layer of intelligence that the entire transportation network depends on.
That's a much safer place to be.
And perhaps a much more powerful one.
The invisible giant. I will never look at a map the same way again. Thanks for this.
My pleasure.
And thanks to all of you for listening. Keep looking for those invisible layers. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of our Digital Servitization Exchange podcast. We hope the insights sparked new ideas, challenged assumptions, and brought clarity to the evolving world of service and digital-driven business models. This podcast is grounded in extensive research across various fields, drawing on years of academic work, case studies, and cutting-edge publications. It also shaped by hands-on experience of our collaboration partners, whose real-world challenges and successes help us to translate theory into practice. If you enjoyed the episode, consider following the podcast and sharing it with colleagues who are navigating the civilization journey. Your support helps us continuing bridging high-quality research-based and practice-proven perspectives straight to your ears. Thank you for tuning in and see you in the next episode.